Roy, tell us about you as a young man. What was the family like that you grew up in, and what was life like when you were younger?
Well, I grew up in Sydney in a middle-class family on the North Shore in the 1970s. It was when I was a kid.
Yep.
My parents were not practicing Christians in any meaningful sense of the word. I suppose you'd call us nominal or cultural Christians. I was baptised and I was sent to Sunday school, which was very common in those days.
Did you enjoy Sunday school?
I didn't mind it, but it didn't grab me. Put it that way. I didn't go on with it as a teenager.
So as soon as you had the opportunity to stop, you did.
Yes. Yes.
What did you go on to study, Roy?
Well, I did pretty well at school, and I studied law at Sydney University in the early 1980s. I was a good student. I was diligent and got myself a good job at a big commercial law firm in the city.
What were you hoping to achieve then in law?
I didn't really know. It was just the thing to do. My father was quite keen for me to do it. I came from a family of journalists and writers rather than lawyers, so I was the first lawyer in the family. It was just the obvious degree to take if you weren't of a scientific sort of mind.
Yeah. If we met you in your kind of law study years,
yes,
what was faith like then for you?
Well, I didn't have any. I was, looking back, I was terribly ignorant of Christianity and religion in general. As I said, I'd come from a well-educated background on many other things. My father was a very intellectual man, my mother too. So I would have liked to have said I was very well informed about many things. I certainly knew the law well, but I didn't have a good grounding in the most important questions of all.
Yeah.
And that was so until my mid-30s.
So going through your 20s, you're in a law firm. Did that go well?
I quite enjoyed it at first. As I got more senior, I actually got more unhappy and dissatisfied. And I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. I was successful on the outside, but I rose through the ranks and became a partner. I was married quite young and I had 2 daughters. But I became increasingly unhappy without quite realising why.
What did unhappiness look like? Did you just feel glum?
I dreaded waking up in the morning. It was subsequently diagnosed as mental illness. But I like to think of it now as a warning, as a providential warning from God. I really do see it that way.
Yeah.
That He was telling me something that my life just simply wasn't fulfilling.
Yeah. When did you start to explore it as a faith issue?
Okay, well, when my older daughter Hope was 4 years old, I decided one Sunday morning that I was going to take her down to Sunday school. As I said, I'd been to Sunday school as a child and I just thought it's the right thing to do. And I had this image of dropping her at the door and having a free Sunday morning. But the local Presbyterian church that I took her to greeted us very warmly, but they said, look, we really don't like parents just to ditch their kid at the door and treat us as some sort of babysitting service. So one of you really has to stay, and I did. Now I started off in the first few weeks just sitting in the back of the pew and half listening to what was going on, but I actually dipped into the Bible in the pew at random. I started reading it. Couple of Paul's letters I remember reading, the Gospels. And Hope enjoyed Sunday school. And very, very quickly I got interested. I got interested intellectually. Later I also came to enjoy the fellowship of the church, but for me it was an initial realisation that there was so much I didn't know.
Okay.
And these were the deepest questions of all that I'd never really properly thought about.
Did that surprise you?
Yeah, it did. And how could I have got got this far in my life without truly turning my mind to, is there a creator God? If so, what does that God require of me? Where did the church come from?
Yeah.
So being the sort of guy I am, I started to read voraciously apologetics, and the minister pointed me in good directions, and I just started to nut it out for myself.
At what point did you get to saying, gosh, this is true and I need to make a response?
It was within 12 months in 1998. I can't pinpoint a road to Damascus moment, though I did 5 years later have what I regard as a personal religious experience in church, but I would have called myself a Christian by then. It was a gradual process of enlightenment.
Yeah, it's intriguing, isn't it? Because the gradual process of enlightenment was an intellectual process. It wasn't like an existential experience.
No, not at first. Though I did, as I say, have in church on Good Friday 2003 a personal religious experience.
What happened then?
I started sobbing, and during the singing of a hymn about the crucifixion, and I hadn't cried since childhood, and I hadn't cried since. And many might say, well, so what? But of course, for the individual, it's all about the timing of such an experience and a response to, in my case, an understanding of the meaning of the cross for the first time at an emotional level, a spiritual level. Yeah.
Isn't that intriguing that you spent all that time thinking about it intellectually, but then in this, hymn on Good Friday, when the church celebrates the death of Jesus, that actually came home personally?
It did. I mean, the sceptics would say, well, you were ill. I was diagnosed the following year as being depressed. But that doesn't begin to explain the context and God's purposes in making you aware that you are ill and what's lacking in your life and so on.
You're married, you have children.
Yeah.
You're going to church by yourself. How did that play out for your whole family?
Very few in my immediate family, not my parents, my siblings, my wife, were practicing Christians. And many were puzzled by the path my life was taking. Puzzled and even angry and shocked. Not all, but some reacted that way.
Did you feel like giving up in the middle of all of that?
Oh no, certainly not.
Okay.
What I did give up was my previous life. I left the law for health reasons, but also I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I simply couldn't do it anymore. Yeah.
What did you then go on to do?
I spent 10 years as a writer, as an author. Initially just freelance journalist. My first book called God Actually, which was published in 2008, it's a defence of Christian faith for hopefully the educated layperson, such as I had been for most of my life. And it was published by ABC Books, actually. I didn't set out to write a book. I initially set out just to try and get my own thoughts straight and then to explain myself better to others. And it developed into a manuscript, which I eventually managed to sell to the ABC.
Was it bittersweet for your dad, because you're now, like, as a journalist and a writer, that which is his background, but but you're writing about faith, which is perhaps he's not enthusiastic about?
Look, Dad was actually a great supporter of my writing, and he looked at all my manuscripts and gave me terrific advice. I worked on him. He died 2 years ago. I worked on him for the rest of his life, and I don't quite know where he stood with God, but he was reading the Bible in his last few months, I know that. Dad was dismayed when I left the law, but he came to see that I needed to pursue other things. Yeah. And I'm now back in the law, teaching here at Sydney Uni.
What's that like?
I love it, absolutely love it. I love being around the young people, the inquiring minds, passing on such wisdom and experience as I had gained in the profession. Yeah. And look, frankly, it's not as exacting a life as being at the coalface of litigation.
Clearly law students are very bright people. Do you get much interaction between you as a person of faith and them as law students?
Occasionally, yes. I've had individual students come up to me after classes and mention, oh look, I realised you've written these books, Roy, or whatever they call me. And some are genuinely interested. Some have gone off and bought them. I try to keep faith out of the teaching of law unless I'm specifically asked. I mean, it is a secular institution. Yeah. But that said, it's impossible to understand the law, the history of our legal system, without understanding the huge part that the Christian Church played in shaping that system. And that's not just me speaking. I mean, eminent lawyers from former Chief Justice Murray Gleeson down have said that over and over again. The Christian Church created our legal system. Yeah.